the issues affecting Asia's animals and the stories of the people working on their behalf. We'll be taking you on a tour of what's been happening lately in the animal protection space around Asia and also bringing you updates from our huge network of animal protection organizations and our many working groups. Welcome to the Asia for Animals podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to the AFA Dog and Cat Coalition podcast. Today we have the honor to meet Christine Dorchak, the remarkable founder and visionary behind GREY2K USA Worldwide. She is revolutionizing the world of greyhound racing, once a flourishing industry now facing a decline. Christine and her organization are fully committed to bringing an end to the inherent cruelty within the greyhound industries.
Well, then thank you so much for having me on the program today. What an honor it is to participate, because what I'm working on is a worldwide effort, and I would like people around the globe to know about it. So thank you so much for this opportunity. The formation of GREY2K USA Worldwide was an accident. In fact, it started by an accident. When I was 26 years old, I was run over by a speeding train while walking my dog, and she saved our lives that day. And when I came out of my coma, the only thing I could remember was my dog, and she was the only thing that held me really to keep trying to fight to survive, because I had many, many injuries, and most people thought I wouldn't even be able to get up again. But I fought hard. I wanted so much to see my dog again. She survived as well. She'd had a hip replacement operation because she had also suffered terrible injuries. But she survived, we survived, and I believed it was because of her pulling us from the brunt of the train. And I said to my family, once I could talk again, I said, I owe a debt to dogs and I've got to repay it. And I just didn't know how I would do it. And I had a lot of healing many years ahead of me in recovery until I could actually put my idea into action. But my idea became GREY2K at that time, to end dog racing in my home state. And from there, we went to nationwide, and now we work across the globe trying to save greyhounds from the cruelty and exploitation of racing.
Oh, that was such an emotional and lovely story.
And I point out that Kelsey was not even a greyhound. She was right. She was a dog. And what our main point at GREY2K USA is that greyhounds are dogs, just like any other dog. They should be treated the same way, with kindness and love, and as family members. And Kelsey stood in the shoes of those greyhounds. When I learned about the cruelty of racing and that there were 2,000 dogs living in stacked cages just a few miles away from me and dying right in front of crowds just so they could have a little bit of a good time gambling, I thought it was horrific. And I said to Kelsey, Kelsey, this is how we're going to do it. So we worked together, and we helped bring a ballot question to voters in the year 2000. And she and I together stood out on corners and collected over 15,000 signatures ourselves to get it on the ballot. That was 10% of number of signatures needed altogether. We were really determined to win. And you know what, Lynn? We didn't win. We lost. So in the year 2000, the first ballot question to end dog racing failed. So part of what I want to, let people know is that ending dog racing isn't easy, and you have to lose a lot to win. And my partner, Carrie Teal, and I have just written a book, and it's called Brooklyn Goes Home. And in that book, we describe the state-by-state campaign and the international campaign to end dog racing. And we show in blistering honesty all the mistakes we made, all the times we lost, but just like me after my accident, we got up again and we said, we're going to keep fighting. They can't keep us down. And every time we lost, we just started all over again. And we've now ended dog racing in um, every American state except one. And where there were once over 60 dog tracks in the United States, there are now just 2. So the United States is setting an example for the world in confronting this cruelty. And we feel this is very important because greyhound racing was invented in the United States. It was an American invention in 1919. So Carrie and I feel an obligation to link arms with groups around the world who want to help these dogs and find a solution to end dog racing. And as a result, there are now petitions and movement to end dog racing in multiple countries, and we're proud to be a part of that.
Thank you so much for your story. It's very inspiring, and I really like when you said that we need to lose a lot to win. Yes, it's very emotional, to be honest. Yeah, I think it would be very inspiring for a lot of us, for a lot of audience who would listen to this podcast.
Yeah, our organization is a very small organization. We are 5 people. We work in one room, desks in a circle. We don't have a lot of money. We are just very determined.
Yes, I think that's all we need. Yeah, like, and thank you and Kelsey for never give up for the dogs. Yeah. I think that for the greyhound racing, not so many people in the public are aware of the cruelty behind it. So, can you please help provide an overview of the current state of the greyhound racing industry and the reason behind its decline?
Yes, unfortunately, the American idea of using greyhounds and exploiting them as gambling props expanded around the world and is now taking place in 6 countries and the entire United Kingdom. So we really want to see change, and change is coming. It's so exciting. There are movements to end dog racing right now in Scotland and Wales, and we have issued public surveys that show that 2/3 of the people in these places want to see dog racing end. We also do petitions, surveys in other countries. In Australia, 60% of the public wants to see dog racing end. So we know where the heart of the people is. And what we try to do is translate this public opinion into action. So it's important for lawmakers to understand that the people they represent are opposed to dog racing. And in fact, there was a recent petition in Westminster. 100,000 people signed it. So change is really happening. It's certainly not going to happen overnight, as we learned from our experience. We've been working for over 20 years, and we're still not finished with our work here in the United States. But because we feel we're so close, we're really focusing more on the international problem. And, you know, the thing about it is, greyhound racing offers the same cruelties no matter where it exists. These innocent hounds are kept in small cages for 23 hours a day. They can't socialize with other dogs. They are fed the lowest quality food because this is not a very, promising or profitable industry overall. So greyhound breeders cut corners, and they need to feed these animals the cheapest food they can. They don't give them the veterinary care that they need. And I can give you so many examples just from my own experience. Sometimes they are so lacking in social skills. You actually have to teach them to be a dog. They've never been a dog before. And at a greyhound track, greyhounds are not taken for walks. Like, that's a normal thing. You have a dog, you take it for a walk. They are let out of their cages 2 or 3 times a day into a little pit it's kind of like a little box for greyhounds. They're allowed to do their business, and then they're put back in the cages, and that's their life. And several times a month, they'll be put out to race. And this is true no matter where you go. If you go to New Zealand, or you go, anywhere in Great Britain, or if you go to the United States, you see the same sequence, the same poor standard. They're put out to race, and they risk the terrible fate of dying on the track, suffering serious injuries. And again, because of the economics, it's often cheaper just to destroy a dog who's been injured rather than to give him the care he needs and give him the rest he needs so he can race again. And obviously, that's what they want. They want to race them again. If they're no good as racers, they're no good. Just kill them. So these dogs are so disposable, and it's and I'd like to emphasize also, not only is the racing inherently dangerous, the conditions terrible, but it all starts with this underbelly of cruelty where greyhounds are overbred to such an extent that when a litter of puppies is born, the breeder decides right there who lives and who dies. After a short time, he or she decides if this is going to be a good racer or a bad racer, a good dog or a bad dog, as they say. And the ones who they think are not going to be profitable are simply killed. So from the very beginning, you have this underbelly of dead puppies. That is the beginning of dog racing. So some people say, oh, well, I went to the track. I didn't see anything wrong. Well, they didn't see all the dead puppies. And they don't see how these dogs live. And they don't see how these dogs suffer each and every day. And even into this moment, I can get so emotional about it because it's just so cruel, so unnecessary, and it's just plain.
It's very heartbreaking to hear what happened to the dogs in the Greyhound chat. Yeah, it's very emotional to hear you describing what happened to the dogs, and some puppy don't even had a chance to live when they were just born because like their trainer and Victor decided that who is got living and who's not.
That's right. That's right. And it's intentional. We have this problem here around the world with too many companion animals than people will adopt. So animals are destroyed in shelters each and every day. Just as we're speaking now, animals are being destroyed at shelters because they weren't adopted. There's some intention in that because people do breed dogs and sell them, and some of them end up at shelters. But here's an industry that's intentionally overbreeding thousands and thousands of dogs, especially in Australia. That is really the hot spot for greyhound racing now. Tens of thousands of greyhounds born each and every year, and they don't need that many to raise, obviously. So they know from the get-go they're going to be killing a lot of those dogs, and the number is so high there, and it's so common to kill them that these greyhounds are referred to as wastage. So that's the business model. It's a business model built on killing dogs.
It's terrifying to think that we humans doing all these things just for money, just for pampering.
That's right.
Here.
Exactly. I often say the greyhound industry cares much more about the buck than the bark.
Yes, agree with you. It's very encouraging that you just never give up. They just didn't stop in America. And like as I know, GREY2K also continue working in other countries as well, like such as Australia, Great Britain, Ireland, Mexico, New Zealand, and Scotland. And I know for the moment you are also following the changing dynamics in Vietnam. Can you describe some legal changes that have contributed to the decline of the greyhound racing?
in Scotland and Wales right now, there is a movement to end dog racing in their respective parliaments, which is wonderful. Just last week, a member of Scottish Parliament dropped his proposal to phase out dog racing there. And we've been very active with that campaign in particular. And we held a parliamentary exhibition there in January to educate lawmakers about the cruelty of dog racing. And one thing they did not understand was that it's a worldwide problem. Oftentimes we just see what's in front of us and we don't really think about what might be happening elsewhere, whether it be the same or different. And we had a gigantic display banner of a worldwide map showing 64 dog tracks in Australia, 2 remaining in the United States, 1 in Mexico, etc. So we showed them around the world where all the dog tracks are, and they realized that they were part of a worldwide problem. And many, many members signed our petition that they would, in fact, support an end to dog racing in Scotland. So Scotland's been very big. Wales also, there is a petition before Parliament. Next week, we're going to Australia, including Tasmania, and then New Zealand, where we'll be speaking at a conference and meeting with lawmakers to share this message with them about the cruelty of dog racing and letting them know that they can make a difference, that they are in a position to help these dogs. And we're fortunate in the United States where there are several states here, about half of our states, allow us to go right to the voters and ask them the question. So if the lawmakers don't respond to our message, we can collect signatures, put a question on the ballot, and ask people what they think, and it's binding. So that's actually how we've ended dog racing in 2 states. In Massachusetts, we went back on the ballot in 2008, and we won handily. And it was the voters who said, we oppose dog racing. We want these dog tracks to close. So those 2 dog tracks that I found out about when I was in my 30s, those are dog tracks that are now closed. And it makes me so happy to know I was part of that. And then we went to Florida, where people went to the ballot and voted by 69% to close down 12 dog tracks. Lawmakers didn't have the courage to do that, but citizens did. So that's another tactic we use. We will go right to voters and ask them to make the decision. Unfortunately, ballot questions or referenda are not available around the world as they are here in the United States. So what we have learned is that no matter where we are, we have to understand the situation in that place. It's not one size fits all. It's true that the greyhounds all suffer in similar ways, and we can make that case. But then there are some specifics with each place and specific incidents of cruelty that happened. For instance, in the news last week was an Australian greyhound owner who bashed 4 of his dogs in the head and killed them. And he has now been removed from the industry, thank goodness. But that's the kind of cruelty that we could talk about in that state in Australia that was very particular to the argument there. So when we bring a campaign, the first thing we do is gather all the relevant evidence. We treat it like a lawsuit. We gather all the relevant evidence, we present the evidence, and then we ask either the people or lawmakers to make a decision. And people and lawmakers will vote for the dogs because we're all joined by this humane instinct to help these dogs. It's just a terrible accident, another accident, if you will, that's somebody thought of this idea of making money off of them because they are some of the fastest animals on earth. And unfortunately, this idea took off as a form of gambling. So that's an accident we're also looking to correct.
I think that's amazing. I know that it's very difficult to work with the lawmakers, and it takes a lot of reason to change the laws and the policy in each country. So from my experience, I usually see that once one industry got exposed, one industry is about some certification or even laws in that country that could be made to the trend protecting the animals and defending the industries. So possibly tell us how you handle those situations.
That's so important. Thanks for that question. It's not a silver bullet. You don't just go to a place and say, here's what you're going to do. You're going to ban dog racing. You start at the beginning. You form alliances. You learn about the actual cruelty happening in that place. And sometimes the first thing that has to be done in terms of the legal process is you have to force the industry to publish its records. So, what we did from our first campaign and moving forward was we passed laws or requirements that the dog tracks had to begin reporting on the number of dogs who were injured and killed and how they were cared for. So, they had to be an open book to the public, and the public had to be able to know what was happening to the dogs. Without that information, it was always going to be he said, she said debate. Instead, we could say, these are their records. Look at this. In Massachusetts, a dog is injured every 3 days. In Florida, a dog dies every 3 days, according to their own records. So that's usually the first step we need to take, because this is an industry that operates in secret. And you have to expose what's happening to those dogs to make your case. You've got to have your evidence. So that's usually the first step. Once we then understand what's happening to the dogs, we look and see what we could do to change the law to help them. So, for instance, we've worked to pass legislation that would prohibit dog racing on days of extreme heat and cold. That can be very important because these dogs really suffer in the heat. I always thought the cold, because I hate cold. It's the heat. They collapse. It's really terrible for them in the heat. So you look at the situation, you try to see, how can I help these dogs now? Even as I'm pursuing the goal of ending dog racing, what can I do now that will help the dogs who are caught in the industry? So it's really important to have this dynamic approach as you go towards your goal of ending dog racing, and be prepared to lose. We've lost many times, and it's because we've gotten up and kept fighting that the industry really doesn't like us very much, because no matter what happens, we just keep coming back. We keep coming back again and again because we know we're right. We know these dogs don't deserve to be treated this way. So if we can be a part of making it better for them, number one, and then ending the cruelty altogether, that's what we want to do. So I really advise people who, whatever the issue is you want to take on, take it in steps and find small victories, small to, you know, comparatively, maybe not your end goal, but steps and victories you can have along the way that not only help dogs, but also expose to the public what's happening to the dogs. And once this information becomes public, then you can commission surveys, as we have around the world, and ask the public what they think. And as I mentioned, the numbers are very high, 74% in New Zealand, 60% in Scotland, 57% in other countries. It's usually about 2/3 of the people oppose dog racing. You bring that information to lawmakers, and it's very persuasive. And it also generates more and more media and more interest in what's happening to the dogs. So it begins to kind of grow and grow and grow. And then finally, when you're able to work with a lawmaker who will file a bill to end dog racing, as Mark Ruskell is doing in Scotland, for instance, he's got the ammunition. He knows he's got the support, and it's much more likely that it will pass. But be prepared for it not to pass and to start all over again.
Well, it's a fairly long and challenging journey, to be honest. And I think the achievement was very motivating for a lot of our audience because I think it's not just about Greyhound, but it's about the animal justice in general.
That's right. That's right.
Like yeah, we are fighting against like big industries and they earn a lot of money from abusing animal. So this is not an easy fight. And
Exactly. One of the things that, we didn't have the opportunity to use until recently is video. Video can be very persuasive, and undercover investigations are happening all over Australia right now. We did one a few years ago showing terrible conditions in a particular kennel. But now there are some really intense videos being produced and released to the public, and it's making a difference. People are really getting to see for themselves the sorrow and the suffering of these dogs. And we always like to ask the question, look at this. Would you treat your dog that way? And of course, if the person is a normal person, says, of course I wouldn't. We've even asked track owners on camera. They'll say, oh, look at these great kennels. We treat our dogs like kings and queens. Ask them the question, would you let your dog live here? And they go, oh, no, not that. So in a moment of honesty, they have admitted this. So for some reason, they think that greyhounds used for racing can be mistreated. They put them in some sort of category where they don't count. And we think greyhounds count. We think greyhounds should be protected. And that's why we're so determined to end dog racing worldwide.
I think that's for the public or for normal dog lovers. They sometimes people just don't realize the cruelty behind the greyhound racing. So yeah, when they see that, they just cannot accept it anymore. It's just like a sport, a traditional sport in the countries, and it happening for years. So it's considered as a normal thing until someone exposes the cruelty behind.
That's right. I mean, what we are focused on greyhound racing only, but one cannot help but compare this situation with, for instance, the circus. People go to the circus, everything looks like fun and light and laughter, but if they could go behind the big top and see how those animals are kept and the elephants are suffering and how they were trained. So keep going back, and then going back to when they were born and stolen from the wild, or even if they're bred in captivity, they've never had a life. So that's what's under the big top, not fun and games, but actually suffering of animals right in front of you. But you have to think about it to understand that situation. Certainly greyhounds love to run, but they don't need to race, and nobody needs to bet on them. So when you really think about it, all those excuses that the industry makes about what they're doing and why, they don't make any sense logically, not at all. And we know that people love dogs, and that's why we're so fortunate to have had some success, but there's so much more work to do. And one thing that our dog Brooklyn taught us was that it is possible to end dog racing worldwide. Brooklyn was born in New South Wales, Australia, and when he was a failed racer there, so his owner decided he would make an extra buck on him, and like so many dogs, so 30 a month, he was sent to race and die in Macau. And there was no adoption program there. So that owner knew he was sending Brooklyn and any other dog he sent to his death. 400 dogs were killed a year because there was no adoption program. So they'd bring in 30, they'd kill 30 every month. And Brooklyn was in that horrible cycle. And fortunately, there was a newspaper story that ran. I had never even heard of the Canadrome in Macau. And when I read about how the dogs were treated, I said to my partner, Carrie, well, we have to close this place down. And he said to me, well, he said, okay, Christine, how are we going to do that from a one-room basement office in Massachusetts? And I said, I don't know, but we are. So I sent our board member, Charmaine, to the track. She took photographs and documented what she saw. And one of the photographs was of this stunning white dog with brown spots, and it was Brooklyn. On his collar, you could read part of his name, and we were able to do research, and we figured out which dog he was. He became the face of the worldwide campaign to close the Canadrome, and Lynn, it took 8 years. That poor dog, Brooklyn, because we had publicized him, the track did not kill him. They didn't want the disgrace of that. So they kept him alive. And he sat in that horrible concrete cell for 8 years. And it breaks my heart because in 2015, we learned about the situation in 2011. We went to the track in 2015. It breaks my heart that while I sat there investigating and watching the races and seeing what was happening, Brooklyn was only a few feet away from me in that cage. If I could have gone in and taken him right at that moment, I would have done it. But he inspired me, that beautiful face inspired me to keep fighting. And when we met with the chief executive's deputies, and we met with the mayor of Macau, we gave them the information about dog racing and that it was a bad mark for their reputation around the world. 300,000 people had signed a petition that we'd put out asking the chief executive to end dog racing. And what do you know? He agreed. He agreed to tell this very wealthy track owner to shut down his facility. He was given 2 years to phase out dog racing. So by the time racing ended, there were only 532 dogs left of the usual 650 dogs. So many dogs had died in the transition. But during the transition, we were also able to work with our Australian allies to stop and block the export of Australian greyhounds. So no more greyhounds were sent to Macau. So it was kind of frozen for those 2 years. And we got out 532 of the survivors. We airlifted them to safety to waiting adoption groups around the world. And we did this as a coalition. And the coalition was led by GREY2K, Albano Martins of Anima Macau, and Pet Levrieri of Italy. So we all came together to save these dogs. And the story of Brooklyn is also, like mine, a story of survival, where he hung on. And when he came out, he was on a mission. Whoever he met, he had this wonderful way of showing them how wonderful greyhounds are. And he was just the most loving dog. Is so forgiving. Despite everything that had happened to him, he was so forgiving and so loving and a real ambassador. So when he came home to us, we treated him as best we could, but he was in such poor condition. We had to have 13 of his teeth removed because he'd been chewing on the bars of the cell for years. And within a month of our adoption of him, he was diagnosed with cancer, and we had to amputate a leg. So this poor dog, he suffered, yet he survived. He comes here for a new life at the age of 10, and then he's diagnosed and loses his leg. And we loved him. We were so fortunate. He actually survived for another 3 years with us before he unfortunately had a stroke, and we lost him after that. But he was a real survivor, and his spirit and something about it. He was just a magical dog. And when people heard his story and understood that it was possible to take on a foreign dog track from wherever you are, and you could literally save the dogs, it inspired a movement that has taken off worldwide. So Brooklyn's the face of that movement, and it's because of that that we call our book Brooklyn Goes Home.
That's a really roller coaster emotional story, to be honest. Yeah. It's so horrible what he has experienced, but sometimes I think that it's just so unbelievable. That's how we can choose some animals so terribly, and they just so forgiving.
That's right.
Toward us, like they despite what he's going through.
That's right.
He's still so friendly to human.
He was, I don't know, everybody loves their dog, but there was something really special about Brooklyn. And when he passed away, people from around the world sent condolence cards, and the leading magazine in town did a big profile of him, a profile of a dog. Can you imagine? On the front page. That's how important he was. Macau was very proud that it had ended dog racing, that it had done the right thing. So at the end of the day, there's the fight to end dog racing, and there's opposition. At the end of the day, when a track owner walks away, he can pat himself on the back and say, I did the right thing. And in fact, the owners of the last dog tracks in the United States, it's a company called Delaware North. This is a company that has actually closed multiple tracks that it owned around the United States. So we're encouraging that company, Delaware North, to do the same thing in West Virginia. So we don't know why it's taking so long, though.
Thank you, Christine, for everything you do, and be always doing it, never giving up. Yeah, I'm very glad that it's his last moment. Brooklyn's he had a happy family with him.
That's right. I mean, behind me, I know you can see this. The audience won't be able to see it, but there's a gigantic couch. And we got that gigantic couch just for Brooklyn, so that he would have all the room that he had, because we wanted to try to make up for all those years he was left in solitary confinement. The thing about greyhounds is they are treated like criminals, but they have committed no crime. They live in concrete cells with no beds, no toys, no nothing. They are serving a life sentence, and they are the most gentle and sweet dogs. And if people can walk away from listening to our interview and understand that these dogs deserve to be treated better, they don't deserve to be used as gambling devices, and they are the ambassadors for other change. When people learn about greyhounds, their minds open up about the treatment of other animals, and then we can expand awareness through the greyhounds. So that's really important, and I hope people can learn from our experience of incremental change, dedication, and stick-to-itness. Keep fighting.
Yes, I agree. Like it's not an easy journey, but it's what it on in the end. Seeing the dogs living happily, like being the dogs, just being themselves in a happy families.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, for our next question, like, is you like to travel to many countries and you witness so many horrible things happening to greyhound across the world. So, is there any something like the common practice that you find in those relationships? The common cruelty happening everywhere. Are they using the same method?
Well, the through line for greyhounds and for all animals, all non-human animals used by humans is exploitation first, compassion second. So the animal is only so good as the money that he can bring in. And this is true, whatever industry you want to look at that uses animals for commercial purposes. There's always going to come the day when the commercial purpose means the end of that individual non-human animal. So, there's an expiration date on their lives, and that's just not right. I do not believe that non-human animals are on this earth to serve me, a human being. I think they should have their own independence and bodily integrity and be free. And that's an ideal, and probably one that can be reached my lifetime or yours. But we should be always moving towards that goal. And there are many roads to doing that. But the understanding that these are animals and beings that deserve to have independence and freedom of movement. And these are all things that are taken away from them, whether they're on a factory farm where they're basically just sitting there being ready to be killed for food, or if they're being bred to be in a circus, or they're on a greyhound farm where if they're not fast enough from the beginning, they're dead. And every day that they don't, bring in money is another day closer to death. And that's just plain. I think anybody can understand that. And there are so many problems in this world, but if we can increase compassion for the beings that we share this earth with, that can make a fundamental change in all of that we do in every way in our daily lives. So I always say, I am vegan. Our organization focuses only on dog racing, but personally, I'm a vegan, and I start my compassion on my plate. And I would encourage others to consider that as well. If they aren't, if their diet right now has a lot of meat products, start taking them out and see how much better you feel. And of course, remember all the animals you're saving.
As a vegan myself, I totally agree with you. All of the animal justice movement just start from our plate first.
If there's no market for cruelty, then those who are trying to capitalize it will stop. It's that simple.
Yes.
So if everyone tomorrow or today, right now, became vegetarian and then vegan, those factory farms wouldn't have any business. They'd have to shut down because they would have nobody to sell their cruel products to. So I do believe in consumer campaigns, and that is part of our work as well. So we use advertising, promoting adoption, and exposing the cruelty of dog racing. So that's another technique that we use, as well as the polling and the lobbying. And just what I found is that lawmakers and voters, they're just people. And if you can get to know people, they'll listen to you and consider what you're saying seriously. So that's really the key, learning to communicate about your issue and make a connection with people. And that connection then leads to the change that you're looking for most times. But if it doesn't, try again.
Yes. Keep trying again, because I think that the thing that we always say that we work for animal advocacy, the voice for the voiceless, because those animals, they don't have a choice, but we do.
That's right. We always say the corruption and cruelty of greyhound racing has always been outshined by the people who are fighting to make a change. I mean, I didn't even know about dog racing when I was hit by the train. I'm from another state. I'm in Massachusetts now. I had just finished college at the time. I went to Boston University, but I'm from New Jersey, and there's no dog racing in my state. I'd never even heard of it. So little did I, that certainly wasn't front of mind when I said I have to do something to help dogs because I didn't even know about dog racing. So you can start from zero and not knowing anything, finding out about what's happening to dogs and take action. It's so clear and obvious. It's not complicated at all. It only becomes complicated when there's money at stake and there are people who will oppose you because they want to keep making money off of these dogs. And when we can expose that corruption and that unabashed just attempt to make money on these poor dogs suffering, that's a bad look for them. And that was really important in the Macau campaign because we understood that reputation was very important to the community. And when Macau was exposed as having the worst dog track in the world, that's what the Canadrome was labeled by me. They could they couldn't endure the continued public scrutiny and negative publicity. And with Albano Martins on the ground right there, talking to media every day about what's happening, I mean, it was relentless. Really important to understand the community that you're working in and what's important to that community. And reputation was very important to that community. In other places, it's about money. More so in the United States, we don't have what's called social license, which is much more known in other countries where a corporation is expected to have a social license, and meaning has the permission and the support of the community for its business. Here in the United States, it's all about money. So we don't use the social license argument so much, but we certainly use it in other places like Australia and New Zealand, because that's a very, very critical thing there. So know your audience and just stay focused on your issue and know your issue better than the industry knows it. That's another thing. We have found that we know more about dog racing than most everyone we debate. And maybe everyone, I'm not sure, but in any case, for years, people just let the dog track owners say wild things like dogs are treated like kings and queens and this and that and the other. And there was no one who could say, well, wait a minute. You keep them confined in cages for 23 hours a day. Would you do that to a king or a queen? You know, so we made them look quite ridiculous, actually.
Yeah. I think those industries, like the Greyhound racing industries, is such a liar because they know that once the public know what really happening behind the scene, they will stop supporting
right.
them. They will stop having money.
That's right. But like the circus, unless people witness an accident, which of course people do, unless they witness an accident and a dog dying right in front of them, they can walk away from going to a racetrack and say, "Oh, that looked like it was a lot of fun for the dogs." You know, well, if you were kept in a small cage for 23 hours a day, and someone let you out of the cage and said you could run, boy, would you run? Yeah. So there's no doubt that they want to break out and run, but they just don't have to race. We don't have to use them as betting pawns.
Yes. Yes, I believe that the public opinion is very important. So can you say what's also like a story where it's like the community joins and that help in the Greyhound racing? Like I know that's one of the GREY2K strategies, and can you please tell us more about now campaigns about like raising public awareness?
Well, as I mentioned, no matter what your political persuasion, you've got a reason to oppose dog racing. If you are a left person who cares about humane issues and animals, obviously, you're not going to like what's happening to greyhounds. If you're a conservative person and you're more focused on money, the fact that this is an industry that can't stand on its own and has to be subsidized with taxpayer dollars, that's outrageous. What we don't subsidize private businesses. That's unheard of and ridiculous. So greyhound racing has been treated differently, and to the loss of taxpayers. So we've often argued that the millions of dollars that a state is giving to dog breeders and people who race dogs in subsidies is money that would be better spent on building roads, hiring police officers, teachers, firefighters, things that would help the community. And it's a very strong argument. So there's the humane and the economic argument, and this appeals to people no matter what their political persuasion is, and no matter what their profession is. I always like to say that if you oppose dog racing, no matter what you do, there's some way for you to contribute. So if somebody's an artist, they can paint a lovely picture of a greyhound and raise funds by offering it in auction, for instance. Or, if you're a writer, obviously you can help. If you're a speaker, you can testify. You can just hand out leaflets. There's just so many things we can all do to make a difference. And I would emphasize that even though our book is for dog lovers, it's also a political how-to go step by step to realize a goal, whatever that goal would be. For us, it's ending dog racing. But if you want to work to improve the environment or whatever it is that it really motivates you and comes from your heart, just have the patience and the belief in yourself to connect with people on that basic level where we all can agree. Like, we can all agree we should have clean water. So if you're working on environmental issues, nobody can disagree with that premise. So start with that strong premise and see how many people come together to support what you're doing. It's really important to know your audience and to treat your audience as people and connect with those people. So we have found that that's really the secret to succeeding on our issue. And I think that really transfers to whatever issue person may be working on.
I think that many people, like in the public or like me, before I started working for organization, I only think that as an individual, I couldn't do much. But after a while, I realized, like you said, we can all contribute, we can all do the small action that could help the animals.
That's right. That's right. And what I try to show with my personal story, going back to your first question, is if a person who's been run over by a train can say, well, I want to make a difference. If I can get up and I can walk and I can talk again, which took me a long time. I lost my memory. I mean, I was really disabled. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I wasn't some special person. I realized after I recovered, and I realized what my goal was to end dog racing, I realized that I needed to become a lawyer because you need a lawyer to change the laws. That's obvious to me, and to understand the law. So I had to understand the problem so I could solve it. So I decided that I would go to law school. So I improved myself, or I learned more in any case. Some people would say it's not an improvement to be a lawyer, but in any case, I went to law school and I used my new skills to form our organization with Carrie Teal. And so I didn't necessarily have much to offer, except I was very motivated and determined to figure it out. So that's all you need. You need that motivation. You need to have that curiosity and that belief in yourself. And then you can go and grow from there. Don't ever think that one person can't make a difference. If I hadn't been run over by that train and had that idea that I had a debt to pay to dogs, there would be no GREY2K. And I don't know what the state of dog racing would be in the United States nobody was trying to change the law. Nobody was trying to end dog racing. They were trying to promote adoption, which we do, obviously. We're one of the biggest contributors to adoption around the world. But the real mission is to end dog racing. So nobody was really doing that. And that's what I thought had to happen. We had to go to the root of the problem. And it was my belief in myself for no reason, really. I wasn't especially smart or beautiful or whatever, gifted. I just knew I wanted to do it, and nobody else was trying. So if you start with that very low, level of just starting at the bottom and understanding you're starting at the bottom, you have the strength to continue, you know?
That's a very great message to our audience, and especially if the podcast reach most of the publishers. If you want to help anyone, if you hear that idea in your head, and if you hear the motivation, the determination to do that, just do it.
Just do it.
And just do it.
And you may not win, but you may plant a seed in the person who is going to come after you and succeed. So that's how maybe that's how you're going to contribute. Speaking generally, a person can contribute by being the spark for the next person, and so on and so on. So sometimes we don't know what effect our actions have, and sometimes that's life, right? But that shouldn't stop us from trying, because really, I said to Carrie and the people that came together with me to form GREY2K, nobody else was even trying. So that was a low bar. Like we're gonna try, and that's it. And have the courage to do that. And a lot of people might say, well, I'm not a big animal rights organization or whatever. We're a greyhound protection organization, very small and focused. So if you just don't worry about the fact that you're not a multi-million-dollar organization and with lots of celebrity support and all that other stuff, just focus on your mission. And our goal is to put ourselves out of business. And I think that should be the goal of every nonprofit organization. I don't want to be necessary anymore. I don't want this mission to be necessary. So if we all had that goal, that would really simplify things. I always say, what the dogs want? Well, the dogs want me to go away. They want this mission to be done, and for them just to be dogs, and I'll just be me, and we'll just go on. So our mission is refined and distinct. Other organizations have broader umbrellas, obviously, and it might not be conceivable to put themselves out of business, but it should still be the goal.
That's so lovely of you to share your story with us, Christine. I think it's very inspiring for everyone who listens to this podcast, especially people working in the animal welfare, like us. Like we all know the challenges, the difficulties, and it takes years to get some small victories, but I think it's on God in the end.
Yes.
Yes. So as we are wrapping up our conversation, do you have some inspiring example of the community that helps support and promote the welfare of the retired greyhound? I think it would be a heartwarming story to end this podcast.
Yes. Well, I'm going to go a little bit off subject with my answer, but I think people understand it. We had a board member named Kathy Pelton, and she fought for years with us to end dog racing in Florida. None of our campaigns have been easy or simple or straightforward. It took nearly 15, 20 years to end dog racing in Florida, her state. And along the way, she became quite ill, and she got breast cancer. And he knew her time was short. So she went to every lawmaker she could. And she said, I'm not going to be here when the story ends, but GREY2K's bill comes up before for a vote this year. I want you to vote for it. And they did. It was beautiful. And Kathy's story inspired so many lawmakers to have a change of heart, that this dying woman would come to them and say, here are my 3 greyhounds. I'm not going to be here to take care of them. I'm going to die. Please vote in my memory. And they did. And even though they did vote and we did pass a bill in the Florida legislature, which was a miracle, unfortunately, the governor didn't sign it. So what did we have to do? Start all over again. But because Kathy was willing to put herself out there and be so honest and expose her suffering to lawmakers, she helped them to understand the problem, and they started to help us. And right now, some of those lawmakers are sitting in Congress. They've now gone from the state office to federal office. And we have a federal bill right now, the U.S. Greyhound Protection Act, that will outlaw dog racing in the United States, prohibit the export of American dogs racing elsewhere, and also block U.S. gamblers from betting on foreign races in all these countries we've been talking about. So it's a comprehensive bill, and these same lawmakers are going to be able to vote on it. And I hope that they remember Kathy when they do.
That's so amazing, Christine.
She was amazing. She was a powerhouse. She really was.
I know I keep saying it, but thank you so much for sharing all of the story with us. From the Taylor story, or the Kelsey dog, or the Brooklyn dogs, it's all amazing together.
And the connection is dogs, Lynn. I mean, every step of the way in my life and in Kathy's life, dogs were so important to us. And more than just family pets, quote unquote, they were our friends and our family members. And from my dog Kelsey to my dog Zoe, she was a rescued racer, to Brooklyn, and then Gina, who I also recently lost to cancer. I've had so many wonderful dogs that inspired me. So I do admit I am a dog lover, and that's what motivates me. But I think no matter what, there's something in all of our hearts that is fundamental, lead to change. For me, it's dogs. For other people, it could be cats, or it could be the environment, or whatever it is. Whatever's in your heart, that can really be your guide.
Yeah. It's really amazing. And we started this podcast with the main focus on the Greyhound, but it's been into a lot of other issues, and it's just very emotional. So it's so lovely to hear today.
Thanks for letting me tell my story, and hopefully if just one person listening to our discussion feels inspired, that's a good thing.
I think it would help a lot of people.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine, for joining us today and sharing your experience with us. Together, we explore the stories, challenges, and triumphs surrounding these industries. As we conclude, let us remember that change begins with awareness and compassion. By standing united, we can create a better future for the greyhounds and bring an end to these cruel industries.
Thanks for listening. You can find everything you need to know about our work and connect with us at asiaforanimals.com. Tune in for the next episode. Asia for Animals Coalition, a united voice for Asia's animals.